I can't believe that it is time for the last panel of today. I don't know about you, but instead of being tired, I am invigorated. I feel empowered. So this conversation, when we end today, will not be closing. This conversation will continue. We will decide how best to go forward from here. I just want to thank you for staying with us and encourage you to stay through our last panel and our closing remarks. Our last panel of the day is our panel on entrepreneurs, forging new ground and giving back. Our moderator for our final panel is Clara Pratt. Clara is Navajo, and she is from Loopton, Arizona, and she is currently serving as acting president and CEO of Nova Corporation. Nova Corporation is a Navajo Nation-owned, award-winning IT service firm. Clara also served in Obama's administration as the National Director of the Office of Native American Affairs of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Please welcome Clara Pratt and her panelists.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Everybody staying awake from their heavy Mitsikam Cafe lunch with the pine nut tart and all that good stuff? I'm trying. So thank you very much for being here and sticking out the remainder of your Friday afternoon with us. I think we're all very excited. I'm very excited to be moderating this panel of amazing, amazing esteemed women. And the entire panel, all the panelists that have been up here today have been just such a joy to listen to and to talk with over the course of the day. So I appreciate them, and I thank the museum for hosting such an amazing event. Pretty groundbreaking to have something of this nature. And thank you to Brenda Pipestem for inviting me along here to be part of this journey. As she mentioned, the panel today will be focusing on forging new ground and giving back. Nearly half of the businesses owned in Indian country are owned by Native women, which is a huge change from, what we see as the norm in mainstream or the dominant culture in the United States, where we've got a lot of entrepreneurs that are men, but not a whole lot that are women. So the paradigm is a little bit different in Indian country, which is amazing and great and wonderful. The panelists, which I'll introduce here in a moment, are incredible, and I've had the chance to speak with a few of them already. So we'll start with Miss Spark here. Miss Spark with her sisters, they're famously known as the triplets that have founded Arxodica. If you don't know Arxodica, I highly recommend that you look this up. I've been singing the praises of their skin serum. I get carded all the time, so maybe that's because of Arxodica. Just gonna put that out there, little plug. But they founded the company Arxodica, botanical skincare and toiletries company, based out of with the Kisunamut, she schooled me on this earlier, Kisunamut tribe here. And then next to her, we have Miss Andra Rush. Miss Rush is the founder, chairwoman, and CEO of the Rush Group. It is a Michigan-based automotive manufacturing, logistics, supply chain management, and freight transportation company. So I can't wait to talk to Miss Rush about that. And of course, we have Miss Hunter, who is more often than not known as the Tonka Bar Lady, right? And Carleen Hunter has done some amazing things when it comes to natural native foods. She's a member of the Ogallala Sioux tribe, and we're just so honored I'm honored to be sharing the stage with these wonderful women. So I'd like to turn it over to them for them each to talk a little bit about what they do, how they got to where they are, and then we'll go into some questions, and then I'm hoping out there in webinar world we'll have a couple questions from the audience as well. So please, Ms. Spark.
Waka Kuyana Dailuti, Winga Machohok. My name's Michelle Spark. Machohok is my Chupik Eskimo name, named after my great-grandmother. We're all named after ones who've gone before us so that they live on. My sisters and I, we are triplets, and usually being Alaskan and being triplet is cause for notoriety with no effort on our part. But we were hoping to leverage that into starting a business. We actually answered the call of the Alaska Federation of Natives to think entrepreneurially, because traditionally Alaska Native groups of the 229 tribes in the state, not too many of them go out on their own to create businesses unless they were fishermen or cottage industry with weaving or carving or those kind of things, which is very important to village economies, especially cyclical. But again, AFN worked with the World Bank in trying to nurture this kind of way of thinking, which is kind of alien to our subsistence economies. And when you're offered an incentive of free money to create a business, well, you're brave. you think you've got it. If your plan makes it through, then you've got some seed money, well, then you can do anything. So my sisters and I, we put our different creative talents together to create a skincare company, because harvesting is something we knew. We knew how to harvest plants and berries, for consumption and for medicinal and homeopathic use, also for weaving, for dyeing materials, for garments and artwork and things like that. So you work with what you know, and we knew how to harvest, so we started putting that to skincare products. Now, we weren't kitchen sink kind of people. We weren't making this stuff in our kitchens, but we knew how to start doing research. We hired an ethnobotanist to interview elders, so we got that on paper. We did a lot of work with the University of Alaska, a Canadian company, Canadian college, Olds College, because they were experts in botanical profiles. We also worked with a private laboratory in Massachusetts so that we could, kind of put it down on paper that we had really extraordinary skincare attributes in our tundra botanicals. And they get about 20 hours of daylight in the summer, so they are super packed with nutrients and sun defenses and things like that. So what we knew traditionally, we were able to verify scientifically. And we kind of hoped that Arxodica, being Arctic, an amalgam of Arctic and exotic, would kind of help connote to you the romanticism of where we come from, which is an area 20 million acres large. We're carved out by two major rivers, the Yukon and Kuskokwim. It's glacially carved out, really rich grounds, and we know that we are de facto ambassadors of a culture, a people, and philosophy that's rooted in subsistence. So we take those kind of roles very seriously, and we try to do nothing to harm the materials or the culture or the people that people look to us as representative of. So we've been in business for about 10 years now, and it's kind of hard to believe, and apparently that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So we just keep on trucking, not literally, but because we have no roads. Yeah, we have no roads. We can't do trucking anyway. Yeah, that's right. So it is a challenge to do business in rural Alaska, but with the seed money from AFN and from business from Indian country, whether it be gaming tribes or just tribal organizations or things like that, I think Carlene would attest to this. It makes a difference. It helps us pay one extra bill a month. So any kind of business from Indian country really is wind beneath our wings, and we're very honored to be here.
Well, thank you. I really love your story. I'm honored to be here as well. It's hard to believe I started my first business 32 years ago, and the thought was I was always entrepreneurial. I was always a little bit different than everyone else, and my experiences, my great-grandmother and great-grandfather are Mohawk, and there wasn't really no borders, but they soon migrated to Six Nations, which is in Canada, and they never spoke English. We were being recruited by the Jesuits to learn English, and so they took my grandmother when she was very young off the reservation, and she would tell us these stories, and I always was fascinated. But in her time, when she came back around age 8 or 9, my great-grandfather was an iron worker, and they were putting in the Ambassador Bridge between Windsor and Detroit. So they left the reservation, and in those days, once you left the reservation, our own people would call her an apple, which was red on the outside, white on the inside. And I'm like, really? Okay. And she, out of all like 52 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, that she and I were just bonded. And she would tell me story after story, and my great aunts. And I was always feeling like I was born in America. I love North America, but I was born outside of where I thought I should be. And I was always creating businesses, paper routes, selling seeds, and I was deathly shy. And as you know, in Native culture, you're out of respect, you don't look people in the eye. But when you start in business, if you don't look them in the eye, they think you're telling a lie or something. So you really have to almost walk in two worlds. But my dream was always my grandmother worked 2 and 3 jobs to support her 7 children and her grandchildren, and my grandfather worked about 3 jobs, and I had always wanted to do something so they wouldn't have to work, and my parents wouldn't have to work so hard. And going to school, I thought, well, starting a business and everything comes by truck. And as I went to college, and I got a degree in nursing, and the only reason I got to go to college was because of a Native American Indian grant that the colleges in Michigan built on native lands, so we got free tuition. And that was, you know, again, other people paving the way for us to have a chance. And that experience, I love everything I learned being a nurse, but I didn't know that at the end of the day, once you graduated, you only made $9 an hour. I'm like, oh man, my grandma can't retire. So I went back to business school, and I took an internship with a freight company and started with trucking. And in that realm, I really learned the business. I made a lot of mistakes, but I found that, you know, if you can create opportunity, it perpetuates itself by the people that work with you as well. And I had always told my customers that they almost sometimes I want to give you an award because you made it 1 year. And you're like, I have 3 trucks, really? But you build your reputation, you do what you say what you do, and you surround yourself with people that are knowledgeable experts, and don't be afraid to find out what you don't know and ask. So we actually took about 10 years, grew that company from an expedite company to total transportation, and by the 10th year, we were doing about $100 million in business. And don't think it's all profits. A lot of people think that the key is make sure it doesn't cost you 101. But as we expanded in trucking, I still felt that there was a gap on how you create economic opportunity in Indian country without having to leave the reservation, because so many that had some economic independence had left the reservation. And the thought was, well, in trucking, you're still leaving the reservation. Maybe we can make interiors for cars. And because we're so creative and have harmony, they're always talking about the harmony of the vehicle, I thought, well, we should be making the interiors and designing them. And I wrote this for 15 years to Ford, GM, Chrysler, Toyota, Honda. And in 2000, GM asked us to make the interior leaning on a multinational company, Magna, for the Cadillac. And that really set the stage to move us beyond the supply chain into assembly, sequencing, and really learning the intricacies of business. We that business is still doing quite well. And then in 2011, just like March 18th, they asked us if we would create opportunity. They said, we'd love to do it on Indian land and First Nation land, reservations, but how about the cement reservation in the cities? Because every major city in the United States has, it seems like a cement reservation where there is no opportunity. There's very limited chances to get out. There's very limited skills training and schooling and education. And so I think you can kill a nation in many ways, but you can kill people by taking their hope and their meaning away. And our thought was, wow, Detroit's going to be coming back, but let's do it. And we started it right, like I think a month after Detroit filed bankruptcy, we started this business in Detroit with the purpose of hiring Detroiters primarily, but anyone really who was qualified, but targeting people that had been chronically underemployed or unemployed. And our goal was, could we create maybe 200 jobs, and then after 5 years, create 500 jobs? And the amazing reality that came from that, and the people that helped us create that Ford and our partner, Forcia, we were able to create 600 jobs in the first year, and we're at 1,000 jobs now in our third year. And I can tell you, thank you. For me, I think I learn more and receive more than our team members, but to be able to be part of people's lives, that you change their family and their future and their thinking forever in a positive way, is just incredible. And it just ties back to a lot of the teachings I've had my whole life, which is, how do we make human beings be kinder to one another, help each other? How do we heal the earth and protect the earth? And how do we look at opportunity as something not just for one, but for everyone? So I'm blessed to have great people and to be able to participate in many communities, and I'm just thankful to be here today.
Ampe tuwashte, imajapi chante sutawi natiwahe pejuta haka. Good afternoon. My name is Carlene Hunter. I come to you today from the Oglala Lakota Nation, from the Pine Ridge Reservation in the southwestern corner of South Dakota. My claim to fame is I have 3 intelligent, beautiful daughters, and they're all at home working in their communities to help improve conditions there. I also have 6 awesome, fantastic grandchildren. And aside from that, I am co-founder and CEO of 2 companies that are located on the reservation. One is Lakota Express, which is 19 years old. It's a direct marketing company, still going strong today. And the other is Native American Natural Foods, which is the home of the Tonka Bar, which we started in 2007, and it's rolling. It's rolling, believe me. Our reservation is home to 33,000 enrolled members that live on our reservation. And it comes from the era of, like most of our reservations, being placed on reservations and under the jurisdiction of the BIA. We have horrible statistics. We have a 70% unemployment rate. Our health issues are atrocious. And I come from an era of, in the 70s, when Native people were fighting for civil rights. That was my cause. Growing up, I couldn't understand why my grandmother was always the last to be waited on. When we went into grocery stores, we were followed around. I mean, there was signs, no dogs or Indians allowed. And so, growing up in being a teenager in the 70s, this isn't right, we're gonna do something about it. So we marched, there was a lot going on, Wounded Knee happened, but what came out of that was there was funding for tribal community colleges that came out of that, more funding for IHS. And, when that all came about, my grandmother looked at me and she said, okay, I know what you don't want, but what do you stand for? What are you gonna do to better things? I thought, well, I thought marching was helping. I thought, I better get into school. I better, we fought for education. Maybe I better get an education. So Oglala Lakota College was just forming then, and I started taking classes. We didn't have a formal building. We had classes in churches, in people's basements, in the schools, the gymnasiums. And I also went to work for Oglala Lakota College in those founding years. And that was late 70s, 78. And so through that movement, I went on and I got my education. I started teaching classes at the college, and I taught entrepreneurship and business courses. My master's degree is in business. So, it became apparent to me that if we were going to change anything on our reservation, we had to bring the economy back to our reservation. It was estimated that when $1 hit the reservation, within 72 hours it was gone. It never turned over more than once on our reservation. Well, you can't have a society function in that type of environment, And I thought, if we're ever going to do anything, we have to be in control of our own finances. We have to ensure that, we can turn the dollar over more than once. People can have jobs. People can have good homes. So I decided, I also was the development director at the college then, and we did a lot of direct mail. We did a lot of telemarketing. And so in the classes I was teaching, I talked about creating a private sector. And all the students said, yeah, we need to do that. Yeah, that needs to happen. But nobody was doing it. We had like 10 native businesses on our reservation, and our reservation is as big as the state of Delaware. I mean, and it was like, we need models to show people it could be done. So in 1996, I quit my job at the college. And I decided, all right, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to show people it can be done. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it. I have no more resources than anybody else on our reservation. And I wanted to show people it could be done. And the goal was to start a business and then maybe 4 or 5 years later go back to the college. Because they had IRAs, they had annuity plans. And so I had this all planned out. And we started Lakota Express, and we started fundraising for Native American nonprofits. And it started rolling and taking off very, very well. So that was in 1996. And, in 12 years ago, we decided if our reservation was to get anywhere economically, private sector, we needed a Chamber of Commerce. So there were a handful of us, 5 of us, that started the Pine Ridge Area Chamber of Commerce. And we would have our meetings, and at one of the meetings, our buffalo producers came in and said, we need more outlets to sell our buffalo. Okay, well, let us think about that. So my business partner and I, being marketers, we decided, hey, what if we created a brand from the reservation, an authentic Native American brand of food, of healthy food snacks? We have our traditional foods that when our people were eating our traditional foods, they were very healthy. We have wasna, which the tonka bar is, buffalo and cranberry, and all natural. Our runners used to pack it in buffalo horns and go out on hunts. What if we took that and made it into a protein bar? And this was before the health, fitness, and natural food era that the nation really gravitated to, was about. And so we developed a whole business plan. And we created the tonka bar and how it would affect people, in the buffalo producing, which would affect our environment, getting buffalo back on lands to help rejuvenate them, and also the health crisis situation. We needed to get back to eating healthier and eating our own traditional foods. So we were proud of ourselves, and we presented it to the buffalo producers. Here you go. And they looked at us like we were blooming idiots. We're cowboys. We don't want to make anything. We just want to sell our buffalo. So my business partner said, well, what do you think? You got another launch in you? Shall we go for this? And I said, sure. How hard can it be? Sure, we'll do this. Hindsight,
I know.
a whole new learning curve. But in 2007, we launched Native American Natural Foods. And the first product coming out was the Tonka Bar, buffalo and cranberry, all natural, high in protein, low in calorie. And we launched at Black Hills Powwow in Rapid City. And we wanted to bring it to the Native community first, because we're usually the last to get anything. Well, the Associated Press picked up on it, and they threw us into a national launch. And people, we had so many simultaneous hits on our website, it brought our website down. And so the whole dynamics of what we were doing changed. We had to ramp up, we couldn't test systems, we couldn't, all these good plans we had laid out the window. But it did help change the paradigm of money flowing off our reservation and bringing it back on. I'm proud to say that we're the #1 protein bar in the United States. I don't know if I can say that next year because General Mills and Hershey just bought our competitors. So we've got the big dogs coming into the channel now. But right now we are. We're the authentic product. And, we were able to create 24 jobs in Native American Natural Foods. And these are career jobs. These, our people, we're training our people, and we're right on the reservation. They could walk out that door and go anywhere and get a job. We've got them in career path jobs. We also are able to impact the health of our reservation. We do a lot of donations to the school systems, to the Head Start systems, to our elders programs, which is in our long-range goal. We're social entrepreneurs. We realize we have to have a positive net profit, but we also want to have an impact on our reservation and on our people. And I'm proud to say that January 1st, our employees became owners into the company. We figured out a way to get them stock. So they don't just have a job, but they're building wealth assets. And we wanted to use that as a model so that other businesses could do that, because we need to start getting our people into asset building and get them into really understanding what it's like to run a business. We've got them in training, we have them in mentorship programs. I'm very proud of all of our staff, and they're the ones that are building the company, believe me. So we've seen what 100 years of oppression did to us, but I'm really excited because I think we're standing on a point in history where our communities are changing. As I said, a little over 100 years ago, our people were put on reservations. Their whole society was taken away. Our language, our spirituality, our economy, our judicial systems. And in just a few hundred short years, we've learned a whole new way of life while holding on to our culture. And I get so excited when I see the hopefulness in our kids' eyes. When I see them realize opportunities there. We have one of our employees, she came to us right out of high school. She never had a job before in her life. She got pregnant right away after high school, and they were living with the grandparents. And she's been with the company since 2007. And we had some people from the BIA come out and visit us, and I wanted the staff to introduce themselves. And she got up there and she said, "I'm Rachel. I'm the logistics manager here. I've worked for the company since 2007, and I'd like to welcome you to our company." And the pride when she said, "Our company." I'm part owner here, and we're very, very honored to have you here. See, I do it, you know, the tears start coming down. But the pride and the opportunity and the hope I see in people's faces makes what we do all worthwhile. And while, you know, we're in all 50 states, we're in over 8,000 retail outlets, we're in Whole Foods, we're in REI. Last week, we got into CVS. Yay! That's all wonderful and good, but what really does it for me is the impact we're having on our reservation. And I'm very honored to be here today, you know, and to listen to all the panelists before us, you know, on today, and to think about the history of where all of our people come from and how our people gave up everything down to their lives so that we could survive. And looking forward into what's going on, I get so proud. You know, I can remember when we were fighting for the Tribal College Community Act bill, and our eldermen were coming to DC, and they couldn't even get into offices. They couldn't even get appointments with people in power. And I look around DC, and you know, Jody Gillette and Bill Mendoza and all these young, vibrant people are now holding those positions. Now, if that isn't progress, I don't know what is. And it has the rippling effect going back to our reservations and building our people and our culture. And so I'm very, very honored to be asked, you know, to be on this panel, to be asked here today. I'm very humble because I know each and every one of you have your own stories and your own, you know, history that you come from, and you know, the wonderful things that our ancestors did so we could be sitting here today. And I guess I just would like to, I didn't follow anything on my, yeah. But I always leave with a challenge to everyone. I'd like you to go home or back to your business, and I'd like you to pull a vendors list. See how many contracts you have with Native American businesses. Because in my way of thinking, if we were all to do business with each other, to help support what others are doing, we would have, all of us, thriving communities. And there's, you know, the Native Edge that's out there that shows Native businesses and their credentials and everything else. Do business with a Native-owned business. You know, vet them. You know, I have to know you can get my product from here to there. You know, vet you. But
On time, every time.
there you go. And support one another. I mean, every panelist here and everyone out there, you know, we're all trying to make a difference for our families, our communities, our nations. Support each other. And I thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think each of you have touched on some amazing points that we can delve into a little bit here at the time that we have left. You know, what's interesting is that I have yet to meet an entrepreneur in Indian country that did not have an activist's heart. It seems to me that every entrepreneur I've met in Indian country has, in the back of their mind or in the bottom of their heart, they've got this feeling of, how do I give back? What do I do? How do I help better the community? You don't see that in every segment of society. And that's something that's very different, I think. And we talked a lot about gender inequality today, right? So there must be something there about women-owned businesses, entrepreneurs, Indian country, how that all comes together. And even though you're in very diverse industries, your mind is, how do I help home? And there's just something just incredible about that. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, one of the questions that I have is, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, or everybody might think they want to be an entrepreneur, but it's very scary, right? All of a sudden, you eat what you kill, literally. You might not have health insurance, or now you have to buy it on the open exchange, so negate that. But you might not have something that's very stable. Health insurance, a 401k plan, you don't have a steady paycheck. So I want each of you, and we'll start with Michelle here, to talk about what made you take that leap, and then to expand on it just a little bit, what was give us the ugly, because I think there's some people that say, I want to be a business owner because I'm gonna be rich, right? Give us something that you just look back and go, wow, had I known, I might have second guessed, because I think it's a good thing to know. So please.
Well, I'm marveling at the museum here because I had a day job once upon a time, and I had really good pay, and I was working for our regional Native nonprofit back in Alaska. And I had enough money back then to have my name inscribed in one of the walls here as a donor, and I went ahead and bought my parents' names up there too. So if I could collect that kind of money again, that would be so great. It's nice to be immemorialized, but wow, that was a lot of money. But you know, those days are long gone, and maybe one day we'd be lucky to get it back again. But it's a huge risk. It's a personal risk, and whoever you get along to go in it with you, it's a very big risk. And I said earlier, we were brave because we had the seed money to start, and not everybody has that. I kind of wish we had a little bit of more mentorship when we started so that we could leverage that kind of money to get better deals and negotiating corners and stuff like that in the beginning. You know, hindsight's 20/20, but you know, all told, over the years, we accrued almost $90,000 in seed money to help us run our business, and that's kind of unheard of. Who gets that almost 6 figures in money with really no accountability whatsoever? I think we're one of the few businesses that actually still exist from that inaugural effort, and you know, and that's no criticism at all of the companies that kind of had to burn out, because it takes a lot of investment. Again, it comes at a cost to you personally. It hits your family, you know, your contracting work and other stuff that you do to make ends meet while you're still trying to get your company, you know, sustainable. You know, it all adds up. But I think when you've actually become a brand or a logo or something recognizable that someone from a tribe in Pine Ridge can say, oh, I've heard of you. And we're like, oh my God, they heard of us. You've heard of us, that's wonderful. So I think when you said a lot of Indigenous Native women businesses get into it because we have very big hearts, and we want to give back, and we want to make sure it represents something more than ourselves. I think that's what motivates a lot of us. And you know, Alaska Federation of Natives said, we want to start creating entrepreneurs in our cultures that don't traditionally think this way, and here we're going to give you the resources to do it. So that was very important to it, but you know, you have to have a stick-to-itiveness that drives yourself and drives your partners. And you know, luckily we have that, and then we also get a return when we go home. You know, we can't donate monetarily to a lot of events and fundraisers, but we can in product. So, you know, we have paid harvesters in cash. You know, and we've had people literally come to us in the middle of the night. Now, granted, the sun is still shining at 11:30 at night, so you know, it's not as if we're bleary-eyed or anything. But we've had people come to us and say, here are some jaitluk, some Arctic sage, you know, I need to get some diapers. And it's like, that's really humbling, you know, that people are depending on us just because we have an idea. So, you know, we've come a long way from those days, but we're also still always going to be in that position. So, you know, it's never been just about us. Our Exotica is about reaching beyond our borders, and it represents a lot of Arctic countries and their botanical strengths and things of the sea. And the reception that we've gotten in Indian country has been really wonderful, and it's wonderful to go to events, you know, at RES or NCAI and NIGA, and have people say, "Oh, I remember you. Here's our purchasing director's card," and we're like, "Thank you." So, you know, it takes that moment, and it takes introductions, and it takes networking and rubbing elbows, but it also takes you guys saying, "You guys should call these people because they, you know, they want to do business in Indian country, and they, you know, they'll make a deal with you." So, like us on Facebook too, please.
Michelle, I think that's great sharing, because I can remember when I first started, and I at least could be a nurse, right? And they just came out working 12 hours, 3 days, and then you'd be paid for 40. And so I thought, well, I'll just work weekends and I'll start the business. And I'll say I'm Native American, I'll go up to General Motors and the first call, and Ford and Chrysler. Well, the first one I went to, the guy laughed at me and told me to grow up. When I grow up, to come back. I'm like, what a rude guy. So then I called on another person, and he said, well, you don't run this company. And I thought I looked pretty old at 23 because I put my hair up, and then when you get older, you wear it down. But I said, well, yes, I do. And he said, no, your dad runs this. Where's your dad? I said, well, he's painting cars. Where's your dad? You know, and so I would talk and ask questions back. And then so I went to the company I internship when I was going to graduate school, and I said, hey, these people are really rude. I mean, they're telling me to come back when I grow up, and where's my dad, and where's my brother, and my husband, and, you know, and at that time they called you Toots and Sweetie and all that. So I was just like, I just want some trucking, okay? So I had credit cards, and again, when you're first doing something and creating a business, you don't know financing, you don't know that when you talk about cash flow and working with banks, that it's almost like talking to someone from a foreign country. So you really need a great CPA. But this one gentleman says, well, how much credit do you have on your credit card? I said, well, I have $5,000. So he said, bring your letterhead over before your 1 o'clock. So I did, and we typed up owner-operators or independent people that, you know, owned their own truck or their own van, because I was doing expedites like FedEx. And I have this whole list, and then I said, oh my God, what? He says, these are all the people you can hire if you get a truckload. Now you go in with the equipment list and you tell them that you own that. And of course, I'm like, oh my God, that would be a lie. So I said, well, I'm just gonna take the list with my brochure and my business card, and I'm sitting next to the guy and I'm saying, Lord, please don't ask me if I own this equipment. Lord, don't let him do that. So he's looking at that, and it's the people, I'm that age now, but I thought that was really old. They had those half glasses, and he put it down on his nose, and he's sitting back, and he's looking, and he says, do you own all this equipment? And I'm like, oh, Lord. And I said, oh, well, of course not. The banks do. Me and the banks. And if I don't pay them, they'll take it all. And I got 3 loads that day. Wow. And so it was, but it was a big, you know, it was a big moment. And then as we grew our business, I had to realize I had to give different types of services. So I could spend all day on all the mistakes I made, but it's, one of the gifts from being in business, there were Native American businesses in the auto industry, maybe 2 others. And they were in Ohio and one in northern Michigan, and we would network with one another, and we would tell our customers about each other. And it was just natural for us to do that, but we witnessed in the business world a lot of people wanted to fight with one another, and they were the same ethnicity or same business, and we always thought, how can we help each other grow and win together? So I think that if you start a business, make sure you have someone who, maybe it's non-native, but they've been in that industry, so they've known it. And I find that people that retire early and they find out that being retired isn't so cool, and they are great words of wisdom to bounce your questions and your ideas or your thoughts about your business, and can really help you stay focused on making the best product or service that you're offering, as well as learning how to communicate it effectively across the industry. And you're so lucky right now in my mind, because you have the internet and you can reach so many people, and you're not getting judged if you're a woman, a man, Native American, non-Native, and so it does expand your opportunity base. And I'm looking forward to reading about several of you someday.
Well, I guess with us, we started the business out on commercial loans. We took personal commercial loans, and that's how we started the business. So we went into it putting everything on the line. And I guess the tipping point for me was, okay, I can talk about this stuff in classes and everything till the cows come home and nothing will ever change. I've got to show people it can be done. So I thought, okay, what's the worst thing? And the worst thing was we fail, we flop. My credit's ruined for 7 years. And I thought, well, but what if we succeed? And, I surrounded myself with real positive people. My grandma used to say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And, I have a great support network of friends that are there to boost me up when I need it and slap me around when I need it and tell me to go home, go to bed, you're just tired. But so we put everything out on the line when we started it. And, we had SBA, we got an SBA guaranteed loan, women's loan, and they told us, move the company. You're behind the 8 ball, you're located, 100 miles from the nearest town, Rapid City. It's one-way trucking. Everything you're doing is against all odds. Move it to Denver, Minneapolis, New York, and
Detroit.
Yeah.
Detroit.
And-
The satellite business,
Yeah.
we're ready for you.
And it was like, this is why, we're doing it, is because we have a triple bottom line, and we want to have an impact here. And no, we're going to do it here. And I had a gentleman tell me, oh, those are some lofty goals there, little lady. And I thought, the nerve of you. I'll show you. But, then we had people that were just wonderful to us, that really wanted us to succeed. Acosta, one of the major distributors in the United States. One of their vice presidents took a liking to us, and he took us under his wing, and he mentored us along the way. I would sit for days in his office, and he would show me how to do projections, and he would show me how to do margins, and he would show me how to do balance sheet projections, which I didn't even know what a balance sheet projection was. And they really went 150 yards. Indian land tenure, they got what we were doing. They're buying back lands to put in Indian hands, but you have to have an economy to go along with that. They partnered with us to start tonkafund.org so we could raise revenues so more Native people could get into buffalo producing. We've had just wonderful support. Whole Foods. Whole Foods was a bear, and up until 2 years ago, I hated them. It's like, I will never walk in one. Well, our staff didn't even know what they were. But it's like, I'm done with it. I'm not banging my head against this wall anymore. And our sales manager just kept doing it and doing it. And the other co-founder just kept banging at Whole Foods. And it wasn't until we told them that they had racist attitudes towards Native Americans that they set up. And they said, we do not. And we showed them where we had to play with using all their rules, but our competitor that came in 2 years after us got into the store without going through any of the processes. And none of their vendors were Whole Foods approved. And once they seen that, it just was a whole different world. We've had 2 Whole Foods vice presidents come out to the reservation, spend a week there, helping us work on our projections, our business plan, new products. They have really been wonderful, but it isn't until you stand up and you really make a stand of, I'm gonna speak up because, well, my attitude was, hell, we're not getting anything from them anyway, so I'm gonna tell them what I think. And we did, you know, and I think it really opened their eyes to, this is something we have to get behind. Indigenous people and indigenous products. Now they want to look at creating a whole indigenous channel. And that's why we named the company Native American Natural Foods, because we wanted the Tonka Bar to be the tip of the spear, but we want to bring in other native reservations and their foods so that they can get into the system. We buy as much native as we can. Last year, we bought 25% of our buffalo was from native producers. We buy our wild rice from Red Lake. We buy our cranberries from Wisconsin. We try to do as much native business as we can. And that's, you know, when you were talking about working together, we work together all the time. If we hear of somebody looking for some type of product, we'll refer products to them. We'll call the company and tell them they're looking for this, get in there and get in there now. So, you know, it's just that working together and the collaboration. And I think symposiums like this help spur it.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so I think we have time for another question, maybe. Do we have any audience questions? Okay, great. Then we can go to one of mine. Okay. Oh, you do have an audience question? Okay, okay, wonderful. All right, we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges you faced, some of the criticisms you faced, how you give back to your community. In this last little bit of questions, it'll be words of wisdom, but I also have a specific question for Michelle, because you touched on it briefly and it got my mind going, about sustainability and the methods that you're blending traditional methods of harvesting with sustainability. How are you going to manage that with a product growth? Let's say all of a sudden, Clara starts buying, 18 million bottles of your amazing serum. What's that going to look like? And the same question for Ms. Rush. I mean, I think I'm going to sing your praises a little bit. I'm going to brag on you a little bit. She's got over 4,000 employees. She is one of the largest employers in the entire state, and she was recognized by the President of the United States for creating jobs. So, incredible, incredible. So definitely like to hear your words of wisdom. And then also for Ms. Hunter, it's a little bit like Ms. Sparks' question, the healthy eating portion of what you're doing, and how has that impacted the lives on the reservation? In addition to job creation, what does that look like? So we'll start there.
Well, in Alaska, I mean, you could stretch it from on the continental U.S. coast to coast. It's a pretty huge landmass we're talking about. We have about 50 billion tons of biomass growing every summer. So we're just a corner of it. I call it the cheek of Alaska. That's the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. We're still about 22 million acres of our own, nation kind of geographic area. So I think we're okay in the sustainability end. But frankly, what we've done up to date, we make a skin serum. It's called Kayungli, which means the potent one, because it has the best of Alaska in a bottle. And we make soaps with the spent botanicals, the post-extract botanicals. So, and we also make toiletries with the second rinse extract. So out of one harvest, nothing goes to waste. Many products are made. And it's a 100% resource utility company, and not many places can can have that kind of bragging right. But it's our subsistence culture. We don't let anything go to waste. But, you know, an average native household in Alaska picks about 7 to 1,100 pounds of biomass, botanical greens and berries for their household for the year. And I think we've only picked about, in the 10 years that we've been in business, we've only picked about 1,100 pounds. So a little goes a long way, and it's, you know, part of it's concentrated and the rest of it is still accessible and usable. So that's a good question. I mean, we do have to prepare to upscale if we ever, you know, if we ever partner up with another group or another beauty company, preferably a tribal group that wants to diversify. So if that comes to pass, then we would also be versatile in crossing geographic barriers. So we would start harvesting in different Arctic countries and also in Indian country and just try to spread out the concentration of harvesting so that we don't hurt any one area of resources.
I learn every day. I love to learn from people, and you know, there's the creativity that you find in everyone's story. Like you said, everyone has a story. For us, I knew that when I did go back to the reservation with my grandmother, that was when I could drive. It was stunning, the poverty that I saw at 16 years old. And then I didn't know that everyone using an outhouse was normal. So I say, hey, where's the bathroom? And natives, I think everywhere in the world are so humorous, right? They're like, oh, out that back door. So I open the back door and I see just steps. So I go back and I wait a while. I said, no, now really, where's the bathroom? They're like, oh yeah, it's out that back door. And it's pitch black because it's in the country, you know, so I'm like, I'm looking and I see a little blue bucket and I'm like, that can't be it. So then my great uncle said, no, you gotta go over there by that tree. And I'm walking, it's so dark and I'm like, oh Lord. And then you sit in there and there's buzzing going around and I'm like, okay, my first money, I'm gonna get plumbing for everybody. That's it. So I come back and I say, and this is the internet's just about starting. And I say, hey, I understand you got to raise $3,000 and then the tribe will match it and you can get plumbing. Because when in our reservation, if you wanted a home, you put your name on this list and then maybe in 10 and 15 years you could get a home. So you could get a 2-bedroom with the steps and the bathroom, or you could get a 3-bedroom but unfinished, no drywall, and you didn't get the bathroom. So everyone went for that because they were used to the outhouse. So I'm like, okay, I can do 6 houses, you know, I have enough money, and so how about we get some toilets here? And they're like, oh, heck no, if you got $3,000, I want a widescreen TV and internet.
Sounds like my grandmother.
But it sounds, you know, and then it dawned on me that my values are what I perceive as people need. You have to listen to people always and understand where they're feeling they're not part of the society or not connecting. So it was a good lesson for me. And then one of the elders in our business, actually 3 or 4 of our elders who started businesses before me, we started the Native American Business Alliance. And that was, its purpose was to not be a chamber of commerce, although those are very good, but to try to link tribal business, private business, and corporate America to the native people and our cultures and our similarities but our differences and how we think. And we survived 10 years. We made it through the downturn and just afterwards, but we didn't have a leader after that, and so it's kind of been on pause. But that experience exposed me to businesses all over the country, including a lot in Alaska. And it was very eye-opening on the similarities in terms of the poverty. We have the highest rate of diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes in any nation in the world. We have the highest rate of teenage suicide, 80 to 90% unemployment. And we're like the forgotten people, because I went, oh, you're on reservation, you don't have taxes. I'm like, really? So we were expanding that, but when I saw the horrific things our United States doesn't even think about, so if we have uncontrolled diabetes, we need to have dialysis until we get control of healthy eating and exercise. And you would need, for the amount of people on this reservation in Arizona, you would need about 15 dialysis machines. They had 2. So the natives were getting dialysis once a week. So I'm seeing 20-year-olds that have amputees or blind or deaf, and many dying at age 35. And so that's been a spark for me. I haven't got that solution yet, but you have to always, to me, you have to think about what you do well, but think about what the future will be, and be willing to change and adapt. And I don't know, I'm still learning wisdoms from so many, but if I can prevent you from ever having any of the mistakes I have made, I love to share. So thank you for letting me speak here.
I love that comment. You really do need to listen. It just reminded me of my grandmother and my mother and her siblings. There were 9 of them. They decided one year they were going to put electricity in my grandmother's house. So they pulled all their money, they got electricity into my grandma's house. And that first night, I spent the night with her, and I was sleeping in her bed. And she got up and she got the flashlight and she turned it on. And I said, Grandma, you don't need to do that. You have electricity. Go flip that switch. And she said, I never wanted that. They wanted to put it in. I don't want it. And away she went. And I thought, but when we were starting NANF, we had listening sessions around our reservation because we wanted to make sure we were on the right path, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing this the right way. So we went and we met with elders across our reservation. We met with the youth across our reservation. We went into ceremony to ask if we were doing the right thing, and we got to go ahead on all of it. In fact, the youth named our product. We were calling it the Red Power Bar. And they said,
That sounds good.
they sat back and they said, oh God, that's so 70s, that's so AIM. And it's like, okay, so what would you call it? So they got together and they came out of their session and they said, Tonka Bar. And it was just perfect because in our language, Tonka means huge, the biggest thing you could dream, the best, largest thing you could think up. And so they actually named the product. But we had listening sessions for a year before we ever started work because we wanted to make sure we were on the right path. Because it is based on a traditional food that we still use today, and we didn't want to do anything, to offend our tribal elders or our youth or anything. And, but we knew we were on the right path because it hit economic development, it hit impacting our communities and healthy eating styles, and it impacted our environment. 3 areas that our reservation, we have to keep concentrated efforts on. Diabetes. On our reservation, 44% of the adult population has type 2 diabetes. It's epidemic, and it's preventable. But, being brought up with generations of eating commodities and eating unhealthy foods, it's hard to break those traditions. And on our reservation, we have to travel to Rapid City, which is an hour and a half away, to go to a grocery store. We're on a food desert. Ironic part, we launch a food product from a food desert. But so we have small C-stores, convenience stores, but the junk we're putting into our bodies are killing us. Nobody has to do it to us. We're doing it to ourselves, and that has to turn around. We've helped build gyms on our reservation. We've tried to get products into the Head Starts, into the school systems, so that people will start putting traditional foods in their bodies. We've started garden projects with Thunder Valley on our community. Thunder Valley's our CDC, Community Development Corporation. And we're really trying to have an impact into turning those statistics around, because nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And I guess a word of wisdom, I got many words. They're all my grandmothers, you know. She used to tell me, Carlene, empty cans make the most noise. Am I an empty can? She said, get the knowledge in there, then speak. But one of the things, she was classic, believe me. One of the things that's our motto at the company is, we don't say no. And it's ironic because when somebody comes into my office and says, we can't do that, my favorite line is, don't tell me we can't do that. Maybe we can't do it to the degree we want to do it to, but we'll find a way to do it. Our ancestors never said, we can't do that. I don't want to move camp now, I'm tired. I don't want to go hunt. So, you know, and I try to remind, well, and all of our staff, pretty young, they're all like 30s and younger. So I can talk to them like this. You know, don't ever say can't, because our ancestors gave their lives so we could be here today. And they didn't give them so we could merely survive and live in horrid conditions. They envisioned us thriving like our traditional ancestors did. So don't ever give me can't, because your ancestors gave their lives for you to be here. And boy, that stops them right in their tracks. So, you know, I never give up. You know, Department of Commerce wanted to give me an award for the pioneer, no, mastering the supply chain. And I told them, I'm very honored, but I didn't master anything. We round-ended, went under, went over. I mean, we didn't master any supply chain because we couldn't afford it. We just got creative on how we implemented what we needed to do. So they came back and said, well, I guess we'd like to give you the Pioneer Award. It's like, okay.
That's great.
So never give up. Just do it. Do it. Me and Nike, just do it.
Just do it, that's right. Well, thank you so much. I think that concludes our time. And as someone who was just recently, unfortunately, told little girls have no business running a company, I have 3 responses for you right here. Thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for for all of your comments and your words of wisdom. And I was feeling loved and supported until Andra said, those people who had to wear those half glasses. She's been back in the green room.
I would have loved to meet you.